Hey there, it's Ingrid, and I'm back again with another fun card for happy little stampers. This fun little quirky card uses the Mix Mash stamp set in a very nice creative little way. I created a little scene, and here's the stamp set. You can see I'm using all the chevrons and the sun image as well as the little dot. We're going to start off with a piece of 140-pound cold press watercolor paper, and I'm kind of pointing to some little tiny dots that I have dried on the paper. I used Winsor Newton colorless art masking fluid, and I just kind of flicked it on with a toothbrush and let that dry. Next, I'm going to take these couple stamps here at the bottom, and pretty much all the bottom stamps, and we're going to create a scene. First off, we're going to do a lot of embossing, so we need to use a destatic tool on our watercolor paper. So you want to get that used pretty liberally all across your work surface. Once you have that down, we're going to take the stamp set. Now we're going to stamp all of our images first in Versamark, which is a watermark ink by Scenic. So what can be challenging sometimes when stamping in Versamark is that you're not really going to be able to see it. So it can be a little helpful if you add some of the clear embossing powder so that you can see your images and then continue to stamp. Use the little circle here, and you know, when I created this, I just kind of thought of having some little snowflakes or some big little circles just to kind of give it that wintry feel, even though the sun's out. Looking back at it in retrospect, it's kind of a funny little thing, but I think that lends to the charm of the project. I'm dipping it into some clear embossing powder, and that is just going to help preserve the color of the actual watercolor paper once we add all our watercolor to it. We're going to go ahead and heat set this, and of course I've sped up through various parts of this, and you know, kind of jumped around because you don't need to watch me heat set everything, just to kind of save on a little bit of time. And next we're doing the sun. So first I stamped it in the Versamark ink, and now I'm putting it into the mustard seed. And mustard seed is a really nice, bright, vibrant yellow. And this is a way for me to get all my distress inks embossed without actually having embossing powders, and this is a trick you can use with any of your dye-based inks. Catch is they're not as totally vibrant as they would be, but you know what, it works. So next we're going to take 3 of the chevrons, and I've aligned them in various heights on a block, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to stamp them in the Versamark ink, and then first we're going to use peeled paint. And then we're just going to kind of add, just for a little bit of interest, some forest moss on the edges of some of the trees or just kind of in random spots. I don't want the forest moss to overtake the peeled paint. I want to have the variation in color. And when you're stamping, always be sure that you're stamping off your project. That gives it some sort of a continuity and some flow to it. Think of wrapping paper. You would never see the design just end right before the edge. It always flows off the edge. You're going to need to clean your stamp in between, because obviously we have ink and we're going to go back into our Versamark pad. You don't want to get green in there. So a little bit of water and just a cloth. And then we're just going to stamp it a second time. And then once we have this stamped, this gives us a little bit of a focal here, and we can fill in the rest by varying some of it. But before we do that, we want to make sure to get some of the embossing powder on there. I don't want that ink to dry too much or to soak into the watercolor paper. So it's important to get that embossing powder to stick to it before moving on. You can choose to emboss it if you want. You don't have to. You can leave it with the powder and emboss it all together, which is what I did as well. Next, I'm going to pull a couple of these off the block, and then we're going to go ahead and stamp those. This way we don't have too much of a repetitive pattern. We have a little bit of variation, some different heights, maybe using, you know, two of the same size trees next to each other, you know, just something a little different. So I did that, and I kind of jumped ahead here so that you wouldn't have to watch everything. And for a little balance here, I'm using the same size tree on the other side of the card. It's also going off, but I'm stamped it a little bit higher than the other side so that it's not too matchy-matchy. Once you've dipped it back into the clear embossing powder, you'll just heat set that. And don't you just love how vibrant these distress inks look? I mean, look at this. It's absolutely fabulous. I love this. It's nice and fun and quirky. So now we're going to move on. We're going to create some trunks. And to do so, I'm using a distress marker because I wanted somewhat of a point, and I'm not going to really get that with the side of the ink pad. So I'm using a ground espresso marker, and we're just going to kind of draw some of these trunks. And I don't need the Versamark. I'm just going to quickly dip it back in the powder. The thing that's nice about distress ink is it's really wet, but the key here is you have to just do a couple at a time. Now, if your marker isn't moist enough, it doesn't have enough juice in there, you can run a Versamarker over it to do the same thing. So those are all heat set, and now we're going to move on to the next step. For the watercolor watercolor portion, we're going to do the watercolor smash technique. I'm going to use tumble glass and broken china as my lighter inks, and we're going to lay those down first. And those are going to be more towards the bottom of our scene. And then we're going to end up putting a little bit of Mermaid Lagoon for some nice bright vibrant blue, and a little tiny bit of chipped sapphire in the very upper part of our sky. Now, I ended up thinking that I was going to do something different with the ground, and it didn't really work the way I wanted it to, so I'm going to have a little bit of masking tape on the bottom of my project. Just ignore that part. You can see here that I have lots of different color, and I'm kind of creating a palette, and then once I have enough color down, I'm going to spritz this now with a very fine water spritzer. And I'm using kind of like one of those mini misters that Ranger sells. Mine is actually through Stampin' Up. And once I have it looking exactly how I want it, now you can always add more afterwards, so don't worry if it's not totally perfect when you first start. So you can see that we're going to be quite liberal with our water. I have a lot of water going down, but the fine mist part of it is really important. You don't want to have too much oomph in your mister where you're actually blowing your ink away. We're going to place our project directly on top of it. Note all the trees are facing the ink. And I am just making sure that all of that water and ink and colored goodness is actually soaking into the paper, and that's why I'm pressing down on it. Now I left this at 100% normal speed for you. You can see I lifted it up, and that's kind of what I have. Now, because we have some embossing already on our project, it's going to kind of trap some of the color in different places. Now, this is also similar to the wrinkle-free distress technique. Now, the difference between the watercolor smash and the wrinkle-free distress is wrinkle-free distress, you're drying it in between. We're not doing that. This is all wet. We want it to look nice and smooth. Doesn't have to if you like the hard lines, which is kind of those sharp edges. You can do that as well. It provides interesting character in projects. And from here, once I have a nice mixture of color, I'm kind of happy with the placement of it, I'm going to come back in with a water brush. Now this is a Pentel water brush, and I'm just kind of spreading it around where I feel that it kind of needs to, or maybe it just hasn't quite gotten into those nooks and crannies. And you can see I have that masking tape on the very bottom. It's actually painter's tape, and I'm going to end up lifting that up at the very end and creating a very, very light wash of tumble glass there. So I'll be doing that off camera. Sorry about that. I don't get it all perfect the first time either sometimes. And you can see here we're just really continuing to spread it around, but you can see all the little embossing parts. You can see those spots, the white spots from where we added those big snowflakes in the sky. And it's really kind of coming together. I hope you can kind of visualize it at this point. This is really a fun process, and I love this technique. I do it all the time. It's always helpful to have a paper towel nearby, especially when you're using a brush, so that you can clean it off there as you're switching colors. Now, as I was doing a little bit of the extra coloring, I always grab the broken china for my base color. Now I'm going to heat set this by using a heat tool. You don't have to. You can let it dry naturally if you'd like. And here is our finished result, and you can see that I've gone ahead and filled in the bottom part with some of the tumble glass, and doesn't it look cool? I love it. Now, to really kind of give this a little bit more of a pop, we're going to take a clean part of a paper towel, spritz it very, very lightly with some water, and rub over our embossing. And that will pull up any ink that has stuck to the embossed images and really let that shine. I love how this turned out. It's so cute and so quirky. And the little elephant from Birthday Friends would look so cute right here in the middle of the forest. Now, remember when we put that masking fluid on? Now we need to take it off. Now that we're done with all our coloring, I'm just gently rubbing away the masking fluid, and it's just going to kind of peel away from your paper. You don't want to do it too fast because you don't want anything to tear. Ours are pretty much really small dots, so it should come off relatively easily. But the nice part about this, it just gives you a nice random pattern, and it preserves the natural color of the watercolor paper. So it's almost like we have snow flurries. It's really cool. And this is our finished project. We're just going to zoom in here so you can really see it up close. I mean, look at the color, the difference in the colors. Because we use distress ink, everything is really vibrant. I mean, I just love this look. It's a very cool project. Now we need to put the project together. And to map this project, I used a little bit of white behind the actual scene to help it to pop. I wanted to keep everything nice and neutral. The white is 3/16 of an inch for a border, and then we have a little bit of the stone showing at the top and the bottom. We're using the happy birthday sentiment, this really cute sentiment that's part of the Mix Mash set, and I'm stamping it in ground espresso and this is the actual distress ink. I don't normally stamp in distress, and when I do, I make sure to heat set it immediately, just because it's a very active ink, so this way it'll just kind of stay put. I'm using some Tombow Mono Multi-Liquid Glue to put the entire project together. It's watercolor paper and it gets very bended and twisted, especially when you heat set it unnaturally. So this is really the best adhesive to use to attach it to the white. The nice part about it is it gives you a little bit of flexibility. Once you lay it down, you can kind of shift it, which is what I'm doing right here to make sure that I have the same amount of spacing top and bottom. I love that this card goes all the way end to end, and I use a bone folder here to just really make sure that that glue and paper adhere really well together. Now my project, because of the heat setting, got a little bit warped, so I'm kind of bending it back and forth here, and I'm going to drop an acrylic block on it. I left it like that for an hour, and then I adhered it to my card base. And look at this. Isn't it a cute project? I love it. Here are some great close-ups for you. Thanks so much for watching this project. I hope you enjoyed that. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to this channel. And definitely check out the Happy Little Stampers channels. We have some cute little videos over that way as well. I'll put the link in the description section below. And of course, you can always check out the blog. I have a specific article linked directly to this project also there. Till next time, bye-bye.